The second thing I wanted to talk about today was the democracy sausage and the upcoming election, and it's kind of unrelated in a lot of ways. But there were questions about it, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have. A couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister dissolved Parliament. He went to the Governor General and he said, I'm going to call an election and it's going to be held on the 18th of May. So here's the thing about elections in Australia. They are compulsory. You must vote. If you don't, you cop a fine. It's about $120. Anyone over the age of 18 must vote. So what they actually do in high schools is they get all the grade 12 students to enrol to vote when they're 16, 17. And then as soon as their 18th birthday hits, they're already enrolled and ready to go. And the election campaigning period, I suppose, after the election has been officially called, the government enters what's called caretaker mode. So what that means is they are not allowed to pass any legislation that the opposition doesn't also agree to, which means that anything controversial, anything that's their party's signature policies doesn't happen or doesn't get passed during this period of time. The only stuff that actually gets passed is legislation that's necessary to keep the country running. So the campaigning period or the caretaker mode lasts for about 6 weeks. And it's going to be interesting. So our Prime Minister will be the leader of whichever party wins the majority votes at the election. And the Prime Minister is not our head of state, by the way. They run the country, but they're not our head of state. The head of state is actually the Queen. And so when the new Prime Minister is sworn in, they're actually sworn in by the Governor General, who is the Queen's representative in Australia. And the Governor General is actually the person who signs off on all our laws as the Queen's representative, because technically the Queen is supposed to, but hey, she can't be bothered, it's too far away. So that's what's happening at the moment. And so we all knew an election was coming up because they have to happen every 3 years. And the government and the opposition were already campaigning because as soon as the election is called, people sort of stop listening to what they have to say. So they try and campaign unofficially for the few weeks before the lead up to the actual announcement of the election in the hopes of trying to get people to listen to their message before they sort of automatically switch off and get sick of hearing whatever the government or the opposition leader wants to say. So anyway, it's about a 6-week campaign. So when I see US presidential elections going on for 2 years, it just baffles me. 6 weeks is plenty long enough. Thank you very much. And, you know, there's so many babies needing to be kissed and there's so many people going to pubs and politicians going to pubs and drinking beer and putting on their Akubra hats and going out to the bush and pretending to be one of the people. You know, both parties are really, they're career politicians, so how much they really can relate to the poor farmers out west who are in a drought or flood, one of the two, is really is an interesting question. We have two political parties, one Conservative Party and one Socialist Workers Party. Interestingly, our Conservative Party are called the Liberals because, well, they're a coalition between the Liberals and the Nationals, which is the Country Party. And our Socialist Party is called the Labor Party. Having said that, they're not that conservative. They're not that extreme. Our Conservative Party looks like the American Centralist Democrats. They passed gay marriage legislation. They passed gun control. They have even implemented environmental protection measures. So they are conservative, but they're not like US conservative. They're not that far right. We do have very right-wing parties, but they are not one of the two major parties that will win government when the election is held. And of course, the great thing about voting day is, you know, if voting is going to be compulsory, you might as well make it fun. So it's all a big party, and there's cake stalls and there's barbecues, which are both fundraisers for the local community. We go to vote at churches and schools usually on a Saturday. Elections always must be held on a Saturday, and they must not be held on any day where another major public event is happening. So, or a public holiday, I think. So there's all these rules about when you can and you can't hold an election. But basically, if you're going to make the public vote, then the election itself has to be held on a day where people can easily get access to the ballot box. If you can't get there in person, you can have a postal vote. If you're not in your hometown, you can just pretty much rock up to any polling booth and vote from a different place. They're scattered everywhere. Polling booths are everywhere. Like, you can usually walk to your local polling booth. I choose mine. There are 3 or 4 that I can go to, and I choose mine based on the presence of a cake stall and a democracy sausage. Like, to me, that's what's important. But it's not hard to vote. There's a cardboard box you go into. So you walk in the door, you get your name ticked off. There's a cardboard booth you go into where you're given a piece of paper and you have a pencil. And you're not allowed to cross out or rub anything out, otherwise your vote is invalid. But you walk into your little cardboard booth and you number the boxes, because it's usually preferential voting, or you tick the box or whatever you do, and then you put your piece of paper into another sealed ballot box, and then that's it. That's done. The only thing is, if you really don't want to vote, you still go in, you still get your name ticked off, and all you do is you just don't fill in the piece of paper. Or you draw a picture of a dick and balls on the piece of paper or something, or whatever message you want to send to the government. Feel free, but your vote won't be counted. So that's how compulsory voting works here. It's really, they can't force you to actually vote because the vote itself is anonymous and it's confidential. All they can really do is force you to go to the place and get your name ticked off. And that's what happens. So that will be happening on the 18th of May, and on the date I will hopefully take my camera around and show you what it's actually like. It's actually quite a fun process, because then you go home and then you wait and wait and wait, wait till everything closes at 6 p.m. and then they start the count. So yeah, I'll let you know when that happens, and I'll try and go somewhere that has a cake stall and a sausage sizzle so that you can witness for yourselves the glory that is a democracy sausage and the cake stalls and all the other stalls that are there. And it's lots of fun. So yeah, I'll talk to you soon. See ya.